Hey, good day, everyone. We're doing an extra credit project, me and Jonathan here. It's going to be on fiber reinforced concrete. First, we're going to go over some of the basics of just traditional concrete. Going to get into the benefits and some of the drawbacks. And after we do that, we'll get into more of the specifics of fiber reinforced concrete and when to use it, when not to use it, things like that. Um, this is going to be handoff to Jonathan here.
Hi, my name is Jonathan. So today about we are talking about some general questions and some general information about the concrete basics. We are talking about the benefits and the drawbacks. We're covering the cost, the compressive strength and workability, and and also the tensile strength and the brittle and low toughness. Austin is gonna say about the benefits of the concrete.
And this is getting into some of more of the specifics of the benefits of concrete. Now, one of the main benefits of concrete is the cost. It is a very cheap material, comparatively speaking, to something like steel. Um, and it can be further reduced with the use of aggregates. It's just a very cost effective material to use when building a a structure or any kind of road or anything. The compressive strength is just one of its most remarkable features. The compressive strength compared to its cross sectional area is always tremendous. You can get upwards of 50,000 load of psi on just a 6x6 cube. It's really something that is makes building really useful. And the workability is also really important to consider when thinking about concrete because always it's able to be worked into shapes that you wouldn't normally be able to do with something like steel, and you can plan out something and have it be much more focused on that specific project as opposed to trying to get a more general beam manufactured at an off something other than yourself has to design it, and you have to design around that. You would be able to design the shape of the concrete around your design specifically. That's a very big benefit. And I'm going to hand it off to my member here, Jonathan, and we're going to discuss some of the drawbacks.
Okay, so about the drawbacks, I want to say about the tensile strength of the concrete is usually only about 10% of its compressive strength, making it susceptible to bending and cracking. I want to give you an example about, let's suppose that a building is made of a concrete. Um, and if that building is on fire, it's harder to get out of the building if it's made of concrete than if it's made of any other material. It's also a brittle material, meaning that this is a little warning for the structural failure. And the toughness of the concrete, which is the area under the the strain curve is very little making it, but not very absorbing the impact. When I go to the next one.
Okay, now this is one of the things that you also have to consider. You have to think about if you want to use a rebar reinforced concrete or a fiber reinforced concrete. And rebar reinforced concrete is more widely used. One of the benefits of rebar reinforced concrete is it's more you can plan it more. It's not as um, asymmetrical, and you can really just design it to be what you need it. Whereas one of the things about fiber reinforced concrete is it can be very statistically not the same and very asymmetrical, and then in that case you wouldn't really get all the benefits. But one of the main reasons why you would want to use fiber reinforced concrete as opposed to rebar reinforced concrete is if you have to use it in something that is very thin, and it just won't be able. You just can't. You just wouldn't be able to fit a rebar in that cross sectional area, and in that case, fiber reinforced concrete really helps out a lot. And you can actually use both of them congruently, and you can get the benefits of both. And it's something that really brings up a lot of the drawbacks of concrete that we talked previously discussed. That's why almost all concrete in buildings have to be reinforced concrete, which it means as a steel rebar, and that allows for the building to be escaped better if you need to escape it in a disaster situation, and things like that. So you just have to think about which one you want to use, which one you will be actually be able to use, and why you would want to use it. Cost might be something to consider, um, and I'll have Jonathan
Yeah.
talk about this here.
So why use fiber reinforced concrete? So we have so many materials, different materials to reinforce the concrete. As Austin just said, we can get rebar, we can get fiber, we can get a carbon fiber reinforced concrete. We can also get fiber, metal reinforced concrete. But in my opinion, I prefer the fiber reinforced concrete because once you put the rebar, it's harder for the workers to work above the river, and also the trucks, they can get into the place where they have to drop uh, the material, the concrete. The fiber reinforced concrete is a much more cost effective, and it can decrease the cost of the job. That's for sure, because you don't have to pay to a pump concrete to a pump truck concrete to drop the concrete in the place that you wanted. The fiber reinforced concrete also does not prevent cracking, while the river reinforced concrete only prevents cracks from getting it too large. Less labor, that's true, because if you have some rivers on the work site, you have to pay for extra laborers to move all the pipes, and that will add more cost to the job.
Okay, let's start talking about the next slide here. So this is getting into a comparison to just normal traditional concrete here. Fiber reinforced, it does a lot. It does a good job at ameliorating a lot of the drawbacks of traditional concrete, and it really does give it a lot more toughness and strength through strain failure. And one important thing to note when discussing this is that it doesn't actually increase the tensile strength. It just makes it so that after it fails, it can be held together through with fibers, and it really and it makes it a lot easier to repair, and it really increases the life of anything that it's used for. Um, yeah, and so this is it's more resistant to bending and shear stresses and impact, which is what we discussed before about the toughness and things like that. Um, and that's about all I have to say about this. So let's pass
Okay.
it out to the next slide here.
Another thing to consider is something else to consider is how does it maintain the benefit of concrete. It actually fares very well in most cases. Let's go over how does it reward. Next
Okay.
slide.
So we go to the next slide here. And then we have to revisit some of the benefits here. It's been the compressive strength has been actually found to slightly increase actually. So it really it actually it increases that benefit uh, to traditional concrete. Um, one slight downside is just the cost. It's going to cost roughly $10 more per cubic meter, which isn't terrible considering the cost of using rebars. I found was about to be 20 or even $30 more. per cubic meter. So
Even
you'd have to consider the cost.
even the
But
label.
yeah, yeah, and the workability is somewhat reduced. It can be a little bit more difficult to work with. Talking with some people that work with concrete, they say that it can be some a little bit of a pain to get it to sit down and not stick up out of the concrete and things like that. So the workability might be slightly reduced, the cost might be slightly increased, uh, but the benefits are so much more that that it's really just kind of nitpicky to talk about what the downsides of fiber reinforced concrete is. So let me pass it off to the next slide.
The possible application. One of the most obvious uses I can see for this idea is the roads. Well, I will say I've been using the fiber reinforced concrete everywhere. Most of the cases in the commercial and residential. Uh, Lately, I see the river reinforced concrete in the industrial because that's the places you wanna just leave the concrete for many years because you have a factory that will have like let's say the floor that has some machines up in the above the concrete, and those machines they don't want to move it for years. So most of the cases we use it like in rows, that's for sure. uh, uh, and in the residential, it will also fare better against the freezing and throwing the nature of many climates that needs roads. The most useful implementation for this idea is when the structure of the road you are trying to build has nothing of a cross section and will allow for use of the river. Um, Many of the cases we don't use rivers on the road. Maybe we use only rivers to connect like one piece of the concrete to another piece of the concrete. That's the only case we use these rivers. Next slide, please.
Okay, let's look into some more benefits. The fiber reinforced concrete has been it's been shown to have more abrasion resistance, and also I think you got into the freezing nature of in the last slide, and that's because it has a lot less water permeability. And even if it does crack within, the fibers are able to hold that concrete together much better. And another major benefit of this is it has definitely been found to be much more fire resistant. So especially if it's like we said before, a burning building. So on top of having more toughness, when it comes to impacts, it also is more resistant to fires and burning, and which isn't makes it even better for making sure that people can escape a building before it collapses. So this can really saving lives. And I'll have you talk about this picture next.
So let me talk about this picture. As we can see here, this is a fiber reinforced concrete. We can see all the fiber that is holding, the other piece of concrete. Um, Let me talk about the finishing concrete. Uh, it is hard to finish this kind of concrete because you have all these little fibers coming out of the concrete, and not many people, let's say not many bosses, because that's the people who wants the concrete to looks like a mirror. It's hard to look for the concrete to look like a mirror when you have a lot of fibers coming out of it. But by the end, we still got that look that so many people is looking for. But it also mm, the length of the fiber matters a lot about the reinforcement. If it's if it's shorter, if the fiber is shorter, it is better for the concrete. It has better strength than the longer ones. Next slide.
Okay, and this is just going over some little facts about it's usually steel fibers that are used. There can be other materials that are used. I think I saw glass and maybe like ceramics. But these are more brittle fibers, and that would sort of not ameliorate some of the drawbacks because concrete is already very strong and resistant to sheer loads and compressive strength. What it needs more help with is toughness and strain and things like that. And so usually steel is a lot more better of a choice when you're considering the fibers to use. But there are other things you can use. There is microfibers and macrofibers when you're considering what you're going to use. And microfibers are usually less than a half inch in size, and you're going to want usually 2 pounds per cubic yard. And macrofibers is greater than half an inch in size, and is you're usually going to need about 8 pounds per yard. And then this says other materials can be used, but the results may vary. You might not get as many of the benefits that we previously discussed. And I'll pass it off to Jonathan now.
Okay, so I'm gonna be talking about challenges and advantage of this topic. One of the biggest drawbacks is the unpredictability of the fibers. Um, unpredictability fibers. Well, some of the challenges and advantage of the fiber reinforced concrete um, is one of the biggest drawbacks is unpredictability and of the fibers is that you don't know where in what direction and where are they gonna be the fibers. They're everywhere and they are in any direction. Let's say they are horizontal, vertical, or it can be in a 45 degrees. uh, but the most important is that you have to make sure that the mix is coming it's a very well mixed because sometimes um, the fibers they come in one ball and they come out of the truck like in one ball. So if you just leave it like that, it what it does after all this ball of fiber is in the concrete is gonna break, like the top of it at least. So you have to tell the driver to mix it well, otherwise to have all the fibers all over the concrete, not just in one place. That in that case, the concrete wouldn't work. And when we have the fiber and the rebars together, these add more these add more strength to the concrete. So it's a very combination, I think. Next one.
Okay, so I hope you like what we had to say today. Some of the conclusions, we can say is that it really does. It is a really good technology, and it has a lot of benefits to it. To traditional concrete, does a good job at ameliorating a lot of the drawbacks that it sees, like some of the problems with tensile strength and cracking and brittle and the low toughness of traditional concrete. Does a good job at bringing those up to standard, and not to mention they can be used congruently with the rebars to have a lot of the other benefits when you consider like the resistance to fire and the resistance to water permeability, which is a big problem here in Michigan. I can say with potholes and things of that nature, it can stop the freezing and thawing and the making big potholes and cracks in our roads. Um, so I hope you had what we liked what we had to say today, and wish you the best rest of your day.
See ya.